Good evening, folks, and welcome back to another episode of When It Was Real. This show focuses on the glory days of the WWF in the 1970s, the perfect time to grow up as a professional wrestling fan. Now, I'm just the podcasting equivalent of the Continental Nobleman. Hopefully Tom Jones is here because he'll appreciate that. But this other guy, he's the one locking up with Patera for the IC title, and he is the one and only Nikita Brezhnikov. Nikita, how are you, my friend?
Beautiful, Benny. Happy belated birthday.
Thank you very much. Dan wanted to know how old I was yesterday. I
talked
didn't.
to you yesterday, and when I hadn't seen it yet, I'm like, shit, it's Benny's birthday. And I called him. I didn't even say anything, like a nitwit.
And it's a milestone one, too. But, I would not tell Dan last night how old I was until after the show was over. And I held up a shirt that shows the year I was born. And he goes, that's all blurry. So I said, oh, well, that's enough of that. So, but I did tell him off the air how old I am. I'm 70. I'll admit it. You know what? I'm alive. I got all the hair, got most of my teeth. Got my marbles.
You're looking good.
Yeah. I can outlift most of the guys at the gym. Don't need a walker. My life is good.
I'm right on your heels, brother. So that's no big deal.
Yeah, thank you, God, for keeping me alive. That's all I can say. But, Nikita, before we do our commercial, I did want to let you know that the folks at Want Radio, WANT, are quite pleased with our show. And so they are extending our gig indefinitely. So When It Was Real is worldwide, baby.
Worldwide.
Wow. But folks, as always,
Whoa.
Yeah. Going to do our pay the bills here, and then we're going to go on to what is going to be a Hall of Fame show.
Yes.
If you give me one. Here we go. Where are we? This is the part that always bumfuzzles me. Here we go. This is Benny Scala, the one and only player. Folks, I am beyond excited to be co-hosting this new show, When It Was Real. And I am just as excited to be announcing our new sponsor, the Free Spirited Company. Free Spirited is a phenomenal old-school clothing company that specializes in short and long-sleeve T-shirts, hoodies, tank tops, graphic tees, heck, even yoga pants. These T-shirts are, to quote Rocky's manager Mickey Goldmill, a wake of art. Yours truly will be rocking the Free Spirited merch on each and every episode of When It Was Real. Not only are these shirts eye-catching, but they are very comfortable as well. Like what you see? Please go to shopfreespirited.com and use our special code MP20 to receive a 20% discount on all purchases. Again, that is shopfreespirited.com, and that code is MP20. As the poet laureate of the Monte The Pharaoh YouTube channel, I will leave you with this. If you like what you see, go buy a tee. Heck, maybe 2 or 3. When your friends tell you, hey, you look like the bomb, send them over to shopfreespirited.com. Well, Nikita, last week we had a great episode about the juice, a.k.a. color, a.k.a. blood. In my humble opinion, all of our episodes have been very interesting, but this is the episode I have waited for. We're going to chat about the WWE Hall of Fame, which is located where again?
Do you know the way to the Hall of Fame?
It's 7 miles east of parts unknown and 20 miles south of Rio, maybe?
Hey, Rio would be good. They usually pull their stunts. Well, they did it in Louisiana, too. But, Benny.
That's right.
To you. Happy birthday. And give me the call signals again.
WANT. Like want. You want it? We got it.
You want it? We want to be there. Thank you. WANT. Right. And if it's worldwide, hey, all the Tavares comrades in Soviet, beautiful.
Salute.
Zdravia, bro. Okay. I'll tell you what, gang. When the first one, the Hall of Fame that they had, it was June 9th, 1994. 94. How many of you were not born yet? Jeez, it's amazing.
I was 39.
Yeah, I was just, beating around the bush. I knew Nikolai. but he wasn't there. And I bought my ticket because it was in Baltimore at the Omni Hotel, the Inner Harbor Omni, which really, it was perfect because it was just like 2 blocks east of the Civic Center. And a lot of the talk was we had to do it in Baltimore because it was like the center of a lot of the activity at that time. Washington, D.C., of course, but it was easier to do that in that Omni Hotel. And that was the days before celebrities, football and baseball players, all the Hollywood pomp and circumstance like that happened in 2005. But this was just a wonderful, warm gathering. Now, Benny, you have some photos. Do you want me to wait till we show them?
Well, yeah, let's do it right now. So first things first. So Andre was technically the first, right?
No. Oh, well,
no?
Yes. Yeah. He, of course, he wasn't there, but
they didn't have an induction for him, correct?
Right.
Okay.
But
here,
and that picture, Andre standing on a box. Vince, he wasn't that much bigger than Vince.
Right.
He was, but it's like they did a little bit of gimmick with it. But you see a picture that's a famous shot in Madison Square Garden where Bruno's shaking hands with him, and you could see that bastard's a giant.
Oh, he really was. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, he may not have been 7 foot because a lot of people have said they took shots with him standing with Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and it's like these guys are legitimate 7'1", and Andre wasn't as tall as them, so he was close.
6'11",
he was probably like the big cat was 6'9", and Mulligan, I think he was about 6'9".
Right. Big guys. So this is the class of 1994. I got him I think in first name order. So we got the Golden Boy, Arnold Skaaland.
Okay. Well, I mean, here's a guy, and I used to see the bonds, and I do have copies of them. He was an officer of Capital Wrestling. But, I mean, my God, Arnie actually wrestled. Now, Nikolai has since beat this record. He had wrestled in 4 decades. When he wrestled a match, it was the same night Andre got the broken ankle in Rochester that they claimed had happened. Of course, it happened when he got out of bed. But Arnold had wrestled that night, and it was like, wow, 4 decades that this man has wrestled in. Now, of course, not straight through, but still it counts. But Nikolai did 5. Probably, it could have been 6, actually, because he never really stopped until the day he passed away, which will be coming up next month on the 29th. And it's like, wow, but that's Arnie. He was a company guy, and he was part of Carlson's Raiders in World War II, if anybody knows what that is. He was a Marine. He was a tough son of a bitch, without a doubt, to survive that and survive all those years in wrestling. I mean, Arnold Skaaland, salute to you, brother. You had it done. That was it.
So when I first started watching in '68, he was he wrestled quite frequently. He'd get he'd get the wins over like an Angelo Savoldi or a with Don Serrano, one of those guys. But then he'd lose to the incoming heel that was going to face Bruno. That was kind of his thing. And a lot of times they did damage,
And Bruno spoke highly of him traveling through the years. It's like, always in his corner, almost everywhere, because the heel managers, no. But Arnold was carrying the briefcase with all the money and the papers and everything else. So he was there. So it's like, okay, come out with Bruno. And then Backlund. When Backlund became champion. So
between Bruno and Backlund, we saw him for almost 20 years, right?
Yeah. And at the right time, not all the time, but at the right time, Arnie would get involved and take a couple of bumps and do whatever needed to be done. But he stayed in great shape because Bruno said he worked out with him. Backlund said the same. And it's like, yeah, Arnold Skaaland, he could, but he loved the cigars. Holy mackerel, did he smoke the cigars?
Nice.
But Vince told a story. He said for Lent, Arnold Skolin was very religious. He would give up cigars for Lent, and he would chew tobacco. It's like, my God, talk about cast iron stomach. Whew.
Oh, you got to be to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. There he is, Bobo Brazil. Now, he opened the Baltimore Civic Center. I believe it was 1963. I think it was April the 7th. He wrestled Buddy Rogers. Buddy was he was heavyweight champion. That was before everything had switched around. And so it's like, boy, how appropriate that they would bring Bobo in and put him there, not, just blocks away from basically another guy that owned that building. Because, again, I'll say it, maybe I'm repeating myself, but when Superstar was champ, Phil Zacco brought Bobo in for a one shot July 16th of that year, 77, and the building sold out. And it was a damn good match, and you knew it would be. And it's like, hey, this is it. Bobo, bring him in, because then in 73, when Pedro was a little shaky, he was running Baltimore for that late spring into early summer, and it was like, yeah, Bobo can get it done.
And I mean, Bobo wasn't a young guy at that time either, was he?
No, he'd been around a long time. But that was the speech when Ernie Ladd inducted him, which I say is still one of the greatest.
Oh my God, what a great speech that is. If you guys have not heard that, please check it out.
Yes. And it's funny because one of the very first photos I ever got with a wrestler was Ernie Ladd when he came into the lobby, very gracious, and he was very good to the fans. And next thing out of his mouth, anybody seen Bobo? And it's like, we're beautiful. And he went headed for the back looking for his partner. So they were close, right, legitimately, no ifs, ands, or buts, no kind of they were definitely true blue friends.
And Bobo had the thing going on with the Sheik in Detroit, right? How many times did they swap that United States title?
It's got to be the record for two people that met each other the most. It's got to be Bobo against the original Sheik, no question. Canton, Detroit, all over Ohio, you name it, Toronto. I mean, man, oh man.
But for years, though, right? I mean,
yes, I'm probably mid-60s into the 70s.
Right.
Because I couldn't remember a couple of shows ago, and it was when I said the Chief and Stasiak, they were in Bobo's corner when he was wrestling the Sheik. That's what it was, if you can believe that. And that was in 77. That was the night Terry Funk won the NWA belt in Toronto. And it's like, wow, the Chief and Stan the Man, they buried the hatchet that night, no pun intended. And it's like, okay, but you didn't know what the hell was going on up in Canada because we were in the dark. We didn't know, no internet. So it worked. So it was great. But Bobo, wow. He had his run with Ernie Ladd, and everybody. Tanaka, Blassie, a lot of matches with Blassie. Holy mackerel.
Now Walt in the chat room is saying Bobo is the first black champion, but I'm not really sure because I think Bobo did win the WWA World Championship when it was based out of Los Angeles, but I'm not sure if he did before or after Bearcat Wright.
Yeah, Bearcat Wright ringing the bell.
Bearcat Wright might have been the first black world champion.
Right. Now, there's a lot of titles out there, people. So, it's hard to really track them all down. But I'm agreeing with Benny. I think Bearcat Wright has Bobo beat on that one. He may have been first.
I heard, actually, it was in Freddie Blassie's book that Bearcat won the title, but then he didn't want to give it back either. There's some stuff going on with that.
Wow, very good for him.
Yeah, that's actually, if you really want to read a great book, I think it was written by Keith Elliott Greenberg, Fred Blassie's book, fantastic wrestling book. Yeah, but Bobo, I grew up with the guy for my whole adult wrestling life. I saw Bobo Brazil. And he was a big guy too, right? He had to be at least 6'5", 6'6".
At least, and he had the Cocoa Butt, and it was adopted, that name, the Cocoa Butt. I mean, people were talking about it that didn't even know wrestling. Going to give you a Cocoa Butt. And it's like, you even know what that is? But it was good. We were always happy when wrestling got put over in any way, shape, or form. So that was great.
I remember Ray Morgan one time. Bobo, I believe, lost a match at the Garden, and that was like unheard of. And I forgot who beat him, but I guess it's whoever they were trying to get over against Bruno. But it was a big deal that somebody beat Bobo at the Garden back in the late '60s. He was right up there.
I remember one of his last matches against Big John Studd at the Spectrum, July 7th of '84. And he had an interview with Cal Rudman. At that point, Monsoon had replaced Cal Rudman as the color commentator with Dick Graham. And Cal Rudman would do behind-the-scenes interviews. And it was a very well-done interview. And it's like, there's the heart of the man for the business. Bobo Brazil, it was wrestling first. And like Ernie Ladd used to say, when Bobo Brazil would come into a city, he would have a suit and tie on. He would be first class all the way, take time, talk to some of the kids. That was it. He was a hero. That's what we needed, and that's what we got back then, heroes. Not somebody doing some kind of gutter lingo and talking about killing cops and stuff like that. A hero that told you to stay in school, listen to your parents, do the exercises, get involved in sports,
right?
And you'll become
get an education, class act, and a gentleman. And
yes.
In 1984, I believe Bobo would have been like either 60 or real close to it.
Yeah, and he was running a little bit with Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas in some six-man tags. And then that was kind of it. And it's like, yeah, I mean, geez, give Bobo a break. Well, that night, though, when he was at the Hall of Fame, he actually was recovering from a broken hip that had occurred over the winter. And because Ernie Ladd was laughing, he said, I tried to break that hip many a time, Bobo, but Mother Nature got you on the ice. And it's like, yeah, then he was walking with a cane for a while.
Wow.
For the old timers, a broken hip it can be fatal without a doubt.
That's the death knell, yeah, especially when you're really old. Let's see.
If you're a woman, especially. There he is, Nature Boy, Buddy Rogers. Now, I liked him. I really enjoyed the Rogers Corner, and I am one of the lucky few that got to see his I believe it was his last active match. He and Jimmy Snuka, and this was like a warm-up because they were going to start to have a run with Lou Albano and Morocco. Now, of course, the year before at the Spectrum on Thanksgiving night, Jimmy Snuka and Buddy Rogers went against Ray Stevens and Albano. On and done. But this time, they were going to try to hit Boston, the Garden, Spectrum. But the first one they had in Baltimore, September the 17th of '83, I'm ringside. I mean, you could feel like you'd reach out and touch the guys. Before they started to make the run, I don't know. Some people say Buddy Rogers got hurt. Some people say they battled over money, all kind of other stories, but it never took off. Arnold Skolin had to fill in at that point. But I was very happy. It was a great match. And I tell you, at whatever his age was in 1983, he didn't just like hang in the corner and take a hot tag and come in for a second or two and go back out. He was in the ring quite a bit with Morocco. And of course, on that, Morocco would have great respect for him and really put him over. But Buddy Rogers was in there giving 100%.
He would have been 62 in '83. Yeah.
He didn't look it. But people...
Yeah, he always kept himself in good shape. You have to say that. I mean, always kept himself in good shape.
People from that Camden, Cherry Hill, Haddonfield, New Jersey area knew, because he had a lot to do with the Playboy Club in Atlantic City. And he was, I think, maybe part owner, small amount, but nevertheless part owner. So you'd see him around all the time, dressed meticulously, and he loved to be adored. He was a ham, like
He was a
we all
showman.
are.
A
Yeah,
showman.
you have to be,
Absolute showman.
otherwise,
right?
You couldn't come out of you couldn't come out of the dressing room, because believe it or not, when a movie set, some people, and I'm just talking the crew here, not like a live audience with a play or something like that. They like they can't perform, and it's like, it's just the fucking crew. They want you to do your shit and go home. They're not really paying attention to you. They're making sure they got the equipment, they got this, they got that. Just do your fucking lines and let's go home. Nobody's like, say, oh, look, he screwed up, he did. Just, but some people can't do it, but when you're a guy like Buddy Rogers, then yeah, you want to be seen.
Yeah.
And he was a household name.
Oh yeah.
That's why I didn't like Ric Flair taking the Nature Boy tag. I hated that. I really did.
And when they did those matches, I think it was in the late 70s, maybe.
Yes. Yes.
Nature. I mean, not Rogers was again pushing 60. Flair was barely 30.
Right. Buddy Rogers could do the figure 4 leg lock. He was one of the inventors of it, actually. And it was like, I know you'll probably get some hate mail, people saying about bad mouthing Ric Flair, but nah, sorry. I don't like a ripoff or a knockoff. I don't like that. Let somebody carry, because especially the guy like this, he worked for it in the days when wrestling was poo-pooed. Yeah, it was on television. It was one of the top shows and one of the first shows that was shown on the Dumont network. But, they weren't like getting big checks. Yeah, if you went to the Garden, places like that, you'd pick up a good payday, but it was a tough life.
Yeah, definitely one of the greats. Here we go. One of my guys, and your guy.
Who is that? Wahoo McDaniel. My buddy the Chief. There he is. Baltimore, and they love the Chief because he got his match with Superstar when Superstar was the champion. And the program said Strongbow gets long-awaited title match. And it's like, yeah, because he was always number 2 with Bruno and Pedro. So it's like, yeah, now the Chief's going to get a title match. And it was good. We loved it. We showed you the one last week from Boston the week before. But the match in Baltimore, I mean, it was just great. And unfortunately, that same day, they showed him turning the belts over with the Billy White Wolf incident. So it's like, damn, talk about near tears. It's like, shit, the Chief turned in the tag belts, and then here he is. He gets beat by Superstar. It was a count out, but nevertheless, he lost. But here's a guy that always gave. He was for the business, because a lot of people said a lot of nasty things about him as an agent. It's like, hey, asshole, he's the boss. Nobody's supposed to like the boss, because you got to make sure these guys show up. They got to get there on time, and they got to be sober. They got to do what the paper says. Like he used to call Vince Caesar. He'd say, Caesar says you got to do this or do that. And it's like, you got a problem, go see Caesar. It ain't my deal. And you're the boss. Chief, Tony Garea, George Steele, Kowalski, all these road agents. And Arnold Skolin, that was their job. Make sure, because Vince couldn't be everywhere, senior or junior. When he ran Phil Zacco's town, he was one of the officers of the company, so no problem. He could keep 2 eyes on everything that was going on. But when they started to branch off and it became more of a Vince Jr., then he relied more on the road agents to keep control over things.
Yeah, I mean, the guys are going to like the guy who lets him get away with shit. So I think it's a tribute to Chief that they didn't like him because he kept him in line, right?
It was like being a sergeant in the police department. You're not supposed to be liked because
Right.
you're supposed to say, you fucked up. Now you got to be held accountable for it.
Right.
Or you got to go a step further sometimes with the punishment. And you're not going to be popular, but it's a job that if you were looking to be popular, this isn't the one to have. So, yeah, Chief did a great job. He was another guy that was wrestling first, and he knew that was where you get your money, right? You put the groceries on the table. So now that he was an agent, great. And as a performer, it was funny because Jim Ross, or not Jim Ross, but Jim Cornette, and he didn't say it disrespectfully, but he said, I watched Strongbow one time, one of the old matches, and I'm looking at this guy, and it's like, what the fuck is he doing? Oh, he throws his head back and he's doing a little bit of dance, and the place is coming unglued. We got guys beating their brains out. They can't get a fart. Nothing. He said, that's how you do it. That's the idea, people. That's imitate somebody like that. But I don't know how you do it. How do you make people love you or hate you? I mean, you just do or you don't. That's it.
He just had it. I'm sorry. He just had it.
Yes. And the headdress, the trunks, the
Yeah, well, I
belt.
remember he tilted his head back, shook his head, and you knew the comeback was coming, and we all went batshit.
Yeah. He used to tell me, he'd say, I'd call crisscross. And he said, if somebody said, what? I said, forget it. You missed it. And then he'd move on from there. But it's
Right.
like, hey, that's it. And working with the Chief, they said it was like a night off because he wasn't going to kill you. He knew
Right.
what he was doing in there. Larry, the
Right.
axe handing, used to say, when I heard the bells, that was like a cash register because I knew I'm going to make money working with the Chief. And there you go.
And one thing that a lot of people forget, we didn't, but a lot of people forgot that when did he come in 1970 to the WWF?
1970, yes.
Yeah, he had been wrestling probably close to 20 years, right?
Yeah, he had been very active as Joe the Rebel Scarpa, without a doubt, in the South.
And he did quite well as Joe Scarpa.
Yeah, he had a lot of titles in the South, and he teamed up with a lot of people down there and had some good feuds. He and Mark Lewin were very close. And then it was like the story goes, Monsoon called him and said, look, and of course they were good friends. And he said, they're looking for somebody to come up here and do this gimmick. And Chief said, if I have to crawl on my belly like a snake, I'll be there. And baby, he did it. But see, he used to tell me his mother was Cherokee Indian. So I know you're supposed to be what your father is, but he did have the blood.
He did okay, so it wasn't completely a gimmick. There was some reality in it.
Yeah, and all these idiots are going to say, well, he was this, he was. It's like, who cares? He was the Chief to us. Period. And Vince loved him.
I believe the week before he came to the WWF, I believe he wrestled Dory Funk Jr. in a title match, 2 out of 3 falls, somewhere in Florida, like a week before. So, right. I mean, that's how good he was, even as Scarpa.
Yes. And Vince loved him.
Look at it, yeah.
Vince could trust him. And it's like, you know what? If you just let him go out there, he's number 2. Bruno or Pedro, number 1 match. Chief is number 2. We'll do great tonight. We'll sell out probably.
And I tell you what, I mean, for an older guy, definitely very agile.
Yeah, like we said last week with the tag team title history, Bruno and Dominic and Mike Mittman were going to try that IWA thing, and word got back to the old man. He was still running things in '82 that, they were going to try to grab Strongbow, Putski, and a couple, and they're like, oh, no. Because when Chief came back with that Strongbow Brothers gimmick, it was flat. But I definitely was happy he was back, but it wasn't the same. That's why he wore the singlet. He realized, time was catching up, and that physique was starting to really show, and it's like, okay,
Well,
so
I mean,
I'll
he?
do this.
He's in his early 50s by then, right?
At least, yeah. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, we can do this with the tag. And then it was good. They whole summer with Fuji and Saito, and they really kept the people going on the edge of their seats, and it worked out well. And then when Jules left,
Yeah.
we were starting to see Chief, Tony Garea, Putski. They were starting to put the people over that were going to be going for Hogan and things like that. But the Chiefs' last match in the Garden was against Nikolai, September 22nd of '84. So it was appropriate. That was great. And they loved each other. They were very, very close friends.
What we got next here?
You, Pencil Neck Geek, you. And I tell you what, how appropriate. Dr. Demento just retired a few days ago after 55
Really? Wow.
years. Yes, 55 years on the radio. So, I mean, with Freddie and Pencil Neck Geek, I don't know. It ran for probably 26 weeks or maybe longer as number one on Dr. Demento. And that meant something. Dr. Demento was definitely like a cult following, but he was a cool guy. Because my wife, Victoria,
very cool.
When she heard, talking about Fred Blassie, she's like, I know Fred Blassie. And I'm like, how the hell do you know Fred Blassie? You don't like wrestling? And she's like, from Pencil Neck Geek, Dr. Demento. I'm like, no shit. And it was like, wow, I guess it really did cross the barriers. And it got everybody involved. But of course, out on the West Coast, he was a big face. Everybody loved Fred Blassie. He was on Dick Van Dyke, Mike Douglas, Regis Philbin. Because Regis was there that night. He inducted Freddie into the Hall of Fame. And I saw him when he got off the elevator. We were in the lobby, and Regis stopped. It was like, I took a picture with him because, it was like, I don't want to be an ass, but it's like, I don't care about Regis Philbin. But it was like, okay, he was a cool guy, whatever. So Freddie definitely attributed appearances on his show, Regis Philbin, to before Regis and Kathleen Lee, but Regis had run, probably 30 years himself throughout television. So Freddie respected that and was like, hey, this guy really helped put me over, not just as the vampire that chewed on people's heads and would file his teeth, but Vince loved Freddie too. They used to really take good care of him. Believe me. And even at the end, when he came out with the wheelchair, making one final appearance, it's like, Freddie had taken such physical abuse. He didn't have a broken neck to the degree Bruno did, but he suffered a lot of vertebrae damage, hips, everything else. And it's like, he paid his dues over the years, without a doubt.
Yeah,
Jay, but a great manager. I mean, that was just brilliant. Put Freddie in there as a manager.
Yeah, he was great. Jay Will's commenting, Dick Van Dyke is still with us. I think Dick Van Dyke is going to be 100 in December. Jay Will, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know he's not quite there yet. But God bless the guy.
He's still with us, yes. And Freddie did a bit. They were at a bowling alley, I think it was, and he did a fireman's carry pickup and twirled him around, and it was cool. Hey,
but you made
a major television show. That was epic,
right? You did not see too many. I mean, you'd see like on the Brady Bunch, you'd see like Joe Namath. I think on you saw Drysdale and Koufax and those guys, and you didn't see wrestlers though. That was very unusual to see a wrestler on one of those primetime TV shows.
Exactly.
All right, who we got next?
Oh boy, the Gorilla.
Gino.
Gorilla Monsoon. Now, here's a guy graduated from Ithaca College, master's degree in English, I believe. Teaching credentials, the whole bit, but an athlete in every sense of the word, because he was a giant. He was about 6'7", He was up there, 400 pounds. Because I remember he wrestled Patera at the Civic Center, and it was a quickie. And he got Monsoon in the full Nelson right after the bell rang, had him on the ropes, nailed him a couple times, and Monsoon takes the big leap out of the ring, counted out. And there he is right in front of my feet. And it's like, holy shit, I've never seen somebody that big. And he sold it. I mean, I was ready to call an ambo for the guy. He just rolled on the floor. But Patera, it looked like he had to apply a bit of pressure. I mean, he's big, Monsoon's big, and they get around him and make that full Nelson effective. I think he probably put some strain on him, but without a doubt, they all paid the price. And Gorilla Monsoon, it was appropriate to put him in there with Muhammad Ali for that buildup. For, hey, it was yesterday. Or wait, what's today? The 25th, right?
Yes.
Today's the anniversary of that Shea Stadium match.
Wow.
And then, of course, Ali was over in Japan. And Freddie Blassie was Ali's manager in Japan against Inoki. I mean, shit. That's epic, too. And, Monsoon to get on television. And when he lifted up Ali, I know all the trainers and the people that handle Ali, they were like, ho, 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 ho. It's like, he knows. They trusted him enough to handle this. He knows.
I do like the fact that he was initially in the ring with Cicluna, right? And Cicluna left after Ali came in.
Yes. He gave him a big chop, and out of the ring he went. And
yes.
And believe me, people, if Gorilla Monsoon gave you a chop, it would equal probably a punch by Ali in the face because, I mean, that guy had the power behind him without a doubt. But we talked last week. He and Bruno went like an hour and a half one time in the stadium. And it's like, geez, he had carried a lot of weight, and I don't care what kind of shape, but he'd play racquetball. He was very active. But that's a lot to carry for all those years on your skeleton. It's just, it's too much, actually. It really is. And what's happening the whole time, it's like, if you do cardio, it's like, well, I'll tell you what, if you put on, and I'm not suggesting it, but if you put on a backpack and it was full of weights or bricks or whatever, and then you're trying to go, that's the equivalent of it because you got that much extra weight to carry, and it makes it that much harder.
Yeah.
The heart's going to give out after a while. It just can't do it.
Bruno said that they wrestled one time, and Bruno hit him with a drop kick and actually cracked a couple of his ribs. Oh, and he went on for another 45 minutes after that. And, I mean, you can't breathe when you have cracked ribs.
I don't know how he did it. It's horrible. Bruised ribs are bad enough.
But this is how committed they were and how dedicated they were. And that really needs to be appreciated.
You had to put the money on the table, or they didn't have a plan where, like, we'll pay you while you're sitting home recuperating. It's like, that's it. You're out.
Right. Okay. All right. Now, I don't know that much about this gentleman, Nikita. James Dudley. Is that his name?
James Dudley, the reason this was done, he really did a lot for the company. Now, they said he was Bobo's manager as well, I believe in the 60s. And I think actually he came out and was managing Bobo and Ernie Ladd for a time. But James Dudley was dedicated to Capital Wrestling Corporation, which spun off to the Worldwide Wrestling Federation and then on and on and on. Now, I was there a couple of times at the Baltimore Civic Center when they would do Monday Night Raw. Nikolai and I would go down, and Dudley would show up. And he had an audience with Vince in Vince's office. And no matter how long Dudley wanted to talk, Vince spent time with him. Say what you want about Vince McMahon, you bastards, but he still had a heart, okay? He remembered people. And they actually bought Dudley a wheelchair because, he didn't have a whole lot of money at the end of his life. And like anybody, it's like, yeah, there's no pension. It's only what you save. And if you, like Haystacks go home in a trailer park, And they had a big interview, and he's like, yeah, I made a lot of money, but it cost a lot of money too. And then when I stopped, nothing was coming in except Social
Yeah. Still,
Security. And we all know what that.
still had the overhead, but no income now.
Yeah. So, Dudley, Vince remembered him, and, he was a humble, good guy. And again, when you say company man, I mean that with respect. Somebody that respected the company and
Right.
knew what it took to keep things going. And it was protected business way back then, very protected. And that wasn't easy to do. It really wasn't. Because a lot of times, if you were going to travel and things were what they were, and if a heel was going to go with a face, it's like, I got to pick you up like 3 or 4 blocks away, and it's like, you really shouldn't do that. And if you got caught, you'd probably both be fired. But what are you going to do? You got, sometimes things happen. Yeah, so James J. Dudley, he was a good guy, good soul. Remembered well by the McMahons.
We have. All right. These are your pictures now, right? Of this event.
Yes, that was the program from the first event. And there's the ticket. $45. Do you see that? In 1994, $45. What would that be equivalent today, Bean Counter?
Probably about $125, maybe.
It
wasn't cheap.
But I had to be there. And when they said business attire, they didn't want you to come in there look like you're going to change the shit house or paint the walls. They wanted
like you worked the shift at the soup kitchen.
But what was neat was, now you didn't have access to any of the inductees, but everybody else that was there. And I believe in my heart that this was the first time a lot of these guys, the greats that we always loved and respected, had seen each other in maybe 10, at least 5 years. And you could see it on their faces. They were so happy to see each other. And because, again, this was the first time it was done. Now, it was done respectfully. And then, of course, I think like maybe the first 5 inductions, it was low key, like done at a hotel, at a boardroom or whatever the hell you want to call it. I mean, it held a couple hundred people, but it was to honor the inductees. But the guys were having such a good time with each other. But we were allowed to get photos, and they talked to you, and they mingled with the crowd. I peeked behind the curtain, and I saw Chief talking with Jimmy Valiant, and I mean, they were just joined at the hip. They were truly happy. And Jimmy, he was there not as an inductee or inducting anyone, but he really always paid his respects to the Chief, because he always, I think till this day, he says, the Chief really, he and the Wizard, they were the 2 biggest reasons I became Handsome Jimmy Valiant, because they really put me over. So that was nice. And then, of course, I got scooted away, but it was like, I had to see Chief. Now here you go. That's Ivan Koloff's bald head, by the way.
I was wondering who that was. Okay.
That's Ivan Koloff. And, of course, Morocco and Morales. And it's like, wow. They couldn't have been happier to see each other. And who knows how long it had been. I mean, shit, this was 94. They finished up in 83. So it may have been that long. Because once Pedro left. Well, wait a minute. No, Morocco, when he came back as The Rock, before Dwayne Johnson's Rock, I don't know. I can't remember because I wasn't really following. It was Pedro around, because I think he was doing some Spanish announcing, or like Tito was, but Pedro was still hanging around a little bit doing some things. So it may have been since 95 that they'd seen each other, or 85. I'm sorry, 85. So
close to 10 years,
I don't know who that guy is, but yeah, it was good to see those two together. And there you go. There's a great picture, George Steele. And to hear George Steele talk as a normal person and interact with you, it was like that was worth the price of admission itself. It's like, holy shit. It was wild. So they had a good time together. And I mean, what more could you expect? But you had the current people there too. Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, a lot of people were, they mixed the people from yesterday with the people of the then today, and it was well done. They had a full house, I'll tell you that. Of course, there was a lot of wrestlers there, but and there's a good look at the inductees and their inductors.
Nice venue, though.
Yes, it was well done. Now that flag, that's about all they had for a long time. And I think it may still be all they have, because it's like, I know they planned on a brick and mortar building. I know this for a fact. And I'll tell you why. Because when Johnny Valiant died, I got contacted by his son Daniel. And he said, Nikita, I have a lot of my father's jackets. And at one point, Howard Finkel was calling everybody for whatever they wanted to donate to a brick and mortar Hall of Fame. Of course, Nikolai gave him the blow off. He said, I'm not retired yet, so I need everything. And Johnny didn't want to give it up right away, neither. And it's like, well, what the hell are we going to get for it? Nothing. It's going to go into the Hall of Fame, and you guys are going to make another pile of money, and we're not going to get anything for it?
Right.
No, not happening. So when Johnny died, so his son Daniel calls me. So I said, well, all right, let me see what I can do. So I called Tony Gurria. I said, Tony, who? He said, Ben Brown. And that's when I became friends with Ben Brown, because he's this great collector. And he's like the archive historian for the World Wrestling Federation, World Wrestling Entertainment, whatever it is now. And because Ben had a show on what the hell was it? One of these cable shows where you have all these, they would go to people's houses. Oh, because my good friend, Dr. Frank Romascavage, who was WWE doctor, he may be a good guest one night. Frank's a character, though. Well, all you got to say is, how you doing, Frank? And to just sit back, and that'll be the end of the show.
Yeah.
He's got the stories. But Frank's office, because Nikolai introduced me to him. We'd go there to get all our blood pressures done and things like that. He's got showcases of, it's a museum. Frank has the friggin' Hall of Fame. Frank has the Hall of Fame, okay? He's got so much stuff, Dr. Frank. And so it was like, he had his things, but it was Johnny Valiant when I got a hold of Ben Brown. So because Ben did a show at Dr. Frank's, and it was like, yeah, look at all this is just, it's amazing. But I don't know whatever happened. They never did the brick and mortar building, and I believe in my heart till this day, that's why they had to go and fish Bruno back. And it's like, and Benny and I talked about this before the show started. If you're gonna have, like, you couldn't have Cooperstown without Babe Ruth or Lou Gehrig, or you pick whoever. You can't have Canton without John Unitas or Dick Butkus or anybody like that. You got to have Bruno Sammartino, or nobody's going to come here. So I think more so than Triple H or whoever the hell's claiming they did this big, great passing of the grapevine and all that, it's like, nah, I think they knew they had to get Bruno in, but it's never materialized yet. That's why we're asking you. Anybody know where this Hall of Fame is?
Right. Absolutely. All right, here we go. This is class of 95, correct?
I believe so. Antonino Rocca. Yes. And there's a guy, another legend. Before Bruno, this would be the guy that would bring the Italians to Madison Square Garden, part of the big riot.
Bruno, right? Yeah.
Yes. But a lot of us remember him from being the color man with Vince in 75 into 76. And it's like, he was hysterical because it wasn't his accent. It was the gibberish that he would talk. And he would go on and on and on. He called Vince General, but it was like, what the hell did he just say?
Yeah, he needed
sometimes Vince would laugh. It's like, okay, Antonino, thanks.
But a huge draw in the 50s, correct?
Yes, and it was a good idea to have a color commentator. And of course, he was succeeded by Bruno a little bit later, and just like 78 was when Bruno came along. But it was a good idea, and it worked out nice.
Yeah.
But I think he was wearing a hairpiece for a while, and it was like, oh my God.
Who, Rocco was wearing one?
Yeah, it looked like it because he had awful lot of hair as he was getting older. It was kind of strange.
One of the first wrestling magazines I bought would have been like probably about 69, and he said, "I'll live to be 100, and I'll be still wrestling when I'm 85." And how old was he when he passed away?
I don't
No, he
know,
wasn't
but
that
I
old.
know.
He didn't look 100.
No. Well, when he got into the ring with the Wolfman after the match with Tony Garea, when he was the referee, actually, he didn't get into the ring. He was the referee, and he started drop kicking the Wolfman. I mean, hey, he was no young guy in 75, but he got it done.
Yeah. All right. Here we go. The King.
The big cat, number 99. And the greatest thing that for me to bring legitimacy was one of those NFL highlight films. And when the Chiefs defeated that rat bastard Joe Cap and the Minnesota Vikings for the Super Bowl in 69 or 70. And then at the end, the last still shot is Ernie Ladd holding up Hank Stram, the head coach. And it's like, that's great. There it is. Thank you, Big Cat, because you put over everything with that. It's like, there he is. He really was a professional football player, one of the few that made the transition into professional wrestling. And I say that rat bastard Joe Cap because of the feud he had running with Angelo King Kong Mosca.
Yeah. But I know both Wahoo and Ladd quit football for wrestling because there was more money in wrestling at the time.
Well, more money and a little bit less physical because, like, Ernie Ladd had horrible knees. Used to see it was no bullshit that he had the knees all padded up. I mean, that was from football. And what goes on in those pits when they start to crash together, I mean, and they do nasty. I don't know how John Unitas ever survived. And there were games where he didn't because the idea was take him out and, then we can beat Baltimore. And they would just ribs, knees, everything just crash with a helmet or whatever to take the guy out. And it's like, and Ladd was there too. Now, can you imagine it was Ernie Ladd, big Buck Buchanan? I mean, there's Kansas City defensive line. It was like, son of a bitch. How do you get by that? Or they're coming for the quarterback. It's like, how the hell do you stop those guys? Damn. They're big.
And then you had, what's his name? The Hammer, Fred Williamson at cornerback, right? Or safety?
Yes. Fred the Hammer. Yep.
They were ferocious. I remember, I mean, growing up in New York in the late 60s, I was a Jet fan, of course. And the premier teams were the Jets. Hard to say that now. Jets, the Chiefs, and the Raiders. And they had some great games, all three of them.
Hey, say what you want about Namath. He was one of the all-time greats.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Another guy that took a beating. But Big Cat, we love you. God bless you.
One of the greats.
There he is. Good old George the Animal Steel. Now, the great thing about him, and he was a school teacher, physical education up at Madison High School. It was on Lawrence Avenue. Because at one time I was staying with a director for a independent film that I was doing. And I saw the high school and I called Johnny Valiant. I said, John, where did George teach at? Was it East Madison? He said, no, it's Madison. He said, you're right down the street from where Georgie Port, used to call him Georgie Port, where he used to teach. I'm like, no shit. That's cool. So when I got back home, I called, I said, Jim, I said, I think I was down the street from where you, what street were you on? I said, Lawrence. I lived on Lawrence, 100 block. It was like a block away. So it was like he could walk. And you notice out of all, when we talked about the bleeding last week, he didn't bleed a lot. And if he did, it would be earlier in the summer, because I'm sure he didn't want to be going back to school with a cut head and have to explain
gigged up,
what the hell happened, because school boards can be brutal. But here's a guy that I really believed his career was done after 1983, but it wasn't. He got revived. And it was like he had matches with Hogan, and then he went on to do the other goofy gimmick but it was with Macho Man, and that thing with Elizabeth. It went over. It sold. Wasn't my cup of tea. I wasn't really watching then, but
right.
I love him for the guy that used to chase us. And he'd turn and look in our direction, and we'd run. I'm telling you, climb over each other's back to get the hell out of the way. Because one night, Mrs. Krieger, God rest her soul, our old famous Baltimore queen of wrestling, he was doing his all over the ring, and she walked up behind him. It was summertime, and slapped him on the back of the head with the shoe. And he turned around and said, "Hey, bitch." He took the shoe, ripped it apart with his teeth, and threw it up in the air. And I mean, all night long, the rest of the show, she's showing the shoe. And it's like, that's great. I mean, you can't beat that. He would come out. No. It was more after the match, the antics, than before. Because one night they all had to park outside. They couldn't get inside the Civic Center. I think it was the dog show was coming, or it wasn't Ringling Brothers, because they would hit in March. So, and somebody walked up to him and wanted to get an autograph, and he said, "Later." And it was like, that was it. Everybody just took 20 giant steps backward, and he walked in, and no problem. So George the Animal Steel, God love you. You were it, Daddy. When he would do that lingo talk, that was the best. That beatnik, "Hey, Daddy, I know tonight we're going to cripple people." And that was cool. But Junior, then he wanted him to do that other gimmick where he couldn't form a sentence or a word. It's like,
I remember when I first saw him, he was quite eloquent.
That was so stupid. But George said Vince loved it. And it's like, he's writing the checks. Okay, I'll do that. No problem. You're the boss.
And that flying hammerlock was pretty devastating. We had never seen anything like that, right?
That's a good, legit hold. And when they did it with that guy, Rick Bolton.
The double jointed guy. Oh, my God.
He was able to dislocate his own shoulder. The first time I met George Steele, it was at an independent show for Dino Sana's WWWWA. And we got to talking, and I said, I got that match where you dislocated Rick Bolton's arm. He's like, "How the hell you know his name?" I said, "I'm mental, George. I'm mental. I remember all that stuff." "You got a copy?" I said, "Sure, I'll make you a copy. Don't worry." So it was like, he said he was no wrestler. I think he weighed 180 pounds soaking wet with rocks in his trunk.
Maybe.
But he just said, "Just go out there, a couple of minutes, we'll roll around. And then when I do that move, you do dislocate the shoulder." And it was like, damn, we were all screaming at home that he killed this guy. Beautiful. He was perfect.
That was sold to perfection.
Yes. There's the Polish Power. Look, there's another guy that owned Baltimore. But when Bruno got the broken neck, who did they tap on the shoulder to go to the Garden the next month to wrestle Stan Hansen? Ivan, the Polish Power Putski. Hold on a second. Come on, stop. And it was like, and when they had Hansen go over, because Putski was busted open, it's like Hansen's like a Superman now. But Putski was huge in he and George Steele in Baltimore, it was a sellout all the time. They could really turn it on. They had a cage match. It was the same night that the Chief wrestled Superstar. And I mean, that was a great cage match. Steele bled good in that one, even though it was the end of August. I guess he figured he could heal up before he went to school. But yeah, Putski. And here's a guy that when he first hit the arenas in 1975 was solid 300 pounds. And he was kind of fat. But he had stamina.
Belly, yeah.
But then each time after that, you'd see him, he'd get more and more chiseled. And it was like, Wow. In fact, he was inducted into Joe Weirder's Physical Fitness Hall of Fame in New York.
Oh yeah, he
Uh,
he competed at the NPC level, which is very high level amateur bodybuilding.
yes, I believe Superstar got inducted in 77, and I think Putski was 78 or 79. So, yeah, I mean, it was legitimate. And it's like Polish power, that was no bullshit. And apparently, he really was in a concentration camp in Krakow, Poland. That's no bullshit. That no
Wow.
act or anything. You know, when he came to this country, he was very grateful for anything that he was able to accomplish, and he appreciated what the success that he had. So, without a doubt, Joe
Yeah.
Bernardsky. So definitely was Polish. That there was a little controversy with the uh, Mighty Igor gimmick, and I don't know who it was that kind of put him into it at one point in Indianapolis, but it was like, and when he hit the East Coast, they wanted you to forget that. In fact, in his Garden debut, after he beat the Wolfman, they were giving him cups of beer. So it's like, okay, he's no more little kid or goofy shit like that. He's putting beers down left and right. Because Vince was funny. He said, "Look at that belly. Putski loves his beer." He was a good
Yeah,
performer.
he really morphed himself.
Yeah. There she is, the fabulous Moolah. And another one, Baltimore. She won the belt September 18th, 1956, when she beat not Penny Banner. I'll think of it. But that was at the old Monroe Street Coliseum, and she didn't lose it until Wendy Richter took it from her at the big MTV event. So it was like, wow. Joyce Grable, or not Joyce Grable, Betty Grable. That's who it was. Same name, but yeah. And Moolah, I mean, she was just, she, whatever, I don't know about any of the stories. I don't want to know about that stuff. But Moolah, for years, she was definitely with the McMahons. You know, they respected her because she would bring the talent. Her against Vicky Williams, you always came to see that, without a doubt. And Moolah could,
First women's match at the Garden, right? 72.
absolutely. And they were big in Baltimore, and Moolah could get it done. I mean, I, except Vicky Williams, who I fell in love with, but if it was the other women, I wasn't too interested in it. But years later, when I got into the business and I saw what they went through, then I had tremendous, tremendous respect, because you take a shot in the chest with a chop or a forearm, for them, it's devastating. It's tough. It's not easy to come back from. And, you know, God love them. They were out there. They were doing it because they loved it. Because the women, okay, yeah, back then there was a disparity in the pay, without a doubt. The women weren't going to get as much as men. I used to be close with Ann Casey, and she used to tell me a lot. She's like, you know, we understood it and we accepted it. We did what we did what we loved. And Ann Casey could probably broke both my arms and legs if I got in a ring with her, but she was a wonderful, sweet lady. But they paid the price, without a doubt.
Oh yeah, they all did. They all did.
There he is, the Grand Wizard of Wrestling, known to you behind the scenes as Ernie Roth. Now, he had to run with the original Sheik up in Detroit as Abdul Farouk. And for I don't know what caused it, because the Sheik, apparently, the original Sheik, got like banned. He wasn't. He was able to sneak into Boston a few times during the early 70s to get some paydays with Pedro and Strongbow, but I don't know what the hell happened. But all of a sudden, he was gone. He wasn't allowed in the door anymore. So we get the Wizard, who wasn't wearing the turban and sunglasses when he first took Blackjack Mulligan as his first protege, but he was Senior's right hand man. He used to open his mail. I mean, he would take care of whatever needed to be taken care of. He was another company man. But when I say that, it means we understand if you want this money train to keep on running, then you got to keep things alive and keep your mouth shut. And I believe it was George Napolitano that told us it was the Grand Wizard who actually got him into the dressing room and got him backstage, which led to George becoming one of the all-time great photographers.
Absolutely. And Ernie Roth, the Grand Wizard. I mean, what a great manager.
Yes.
I didn't think Superstar Graham really needed him to do the talking because Superstar was so great on the mic himself. But I think they worked very well together.
Absolutely. And there would be times you could see the Superstar say, "Go tell him about me, Wizard," because it was like, okay, he's talking a lot. Let the Wizard get his time in.
Yeah,
but it was a
right.
perfect combination. You loved it, especially when the Wizard would carry the belt, and it was kind of like he had that look, like up your ass, look, we got the belt. He was perfect at it. He could run his mouth and make you throw shoes at the television because you just couldn't stand him anymore. He was great at it, but nobody put a hand on him over the years.
No, I don't think I ever saw him get mauled.
No, Pedro latched on to him one time, but then Morocco came to the rescue. And I think that was like Lou Albano never got pinned or submitted. You don't hit the Wizard because he keeps his heat, and you want to see somebody strangle him till those turban, becomes like dissolves like the Wicked Witch. But don't hit him, don't touch him. Keep them on that line. Pedro Morales, for whatever reason, Pedro did not come to accept his award. Savio Vega appeared to accept the award.
And why was that? Do you know
I
why?
have no idea.
Okay.
I do not know. I saw Pedro years later. Johnny Rods, Jose Estrada was there, and he was living, I believe, in Jersey City, somewhere, definitely North Jersey.
He was in New Jersey, yeah.
Yeah, so because he said to Nikolai, we have to get together and get a nice steak, and then, that would be good. But I don't know how much longer he survived after that. But I don't know if he had heat with them, or if it didn't feel good, whatever. But Savio Vega accepted the award, which leads me to believe, something happened, and Pedro he soured on the whole thing. But they knew they had to get him in there, even though they didn't do Bruno for probably another 15 years later, right?
I think more than that, actually.
It could be more. And the Superfly had the best.
1996.
He had the best closing statement when he said, and he looked down at Vince and he said, "This doesn't mean I'm done." And it's like, yes, very good, Jimmy. Vince was laughing. It's like, okay, I got you. Yes, you're not retired, but you are in the Hall of Fame. And here's a guy that the popularity was compared to Strongbow in the early 70s because he comes in as this mega monster heel. Again, it was kind of stupid, not letting him speak, but whatever. It didn't matter. When he came off the cage against Backlund, that's the moment that Superfly Jimmy Snuka fell into the hearts of the WWF fans. And we'd never seen anything like that before. It's like, holy shit, this guy jumped off the top of the cage. And of course, he missed, but nevertheless, he took the dive. And then it was like, that was June 28th of 82. Then it was like, this guy's just popular. We have to turn him. So then it's perfect. Perfect segue. Buddy Rogers comes in, and they legitimately were together down south, I believe, because it was Jimmy and Ray Stevens were a team at one time in the South. So it's like, okay, when Buddy Rogers started the Rogers Corner and the Angle started with Snuka and Albano, And that's why Rogers, because he first interviewed Vince as his first guest, and he said, I've known Snuka before. This isn't the first time I've met Snuka. And he was, true fiction. There it is. They had a history together. So it was like just great. Perfect. And then when they did the attack on television, and I mean, Jimmy's cut to shreds and the 2 pile drivers on the floor. I mean, it's like, oh my God. Well, Sal Corrente could tell a good story about it. And he's like, the next day they were for breakfast, and Jimmy's got the neck brace on, and he's acting like he can't even hold a spoon. And he said they just sold it to perfection. And it was like, great. That's beautiful. We loved it.
Oh, yeah.
Because that match with Albano, that was his return, and it was just great. The unpredictable, our buddy, Mr. Johnny Rods.
I'm hoping he's watching this. I think he watches this once in a while.
Good. Well, amigo, you deserved it, because these idiots, when they say, I never won a match, it's like, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. If you got in there with Johnny Rods, or if you needed to tame somebody, they'd put him in there with Johnny Rods, and he would teach you the last lesson first, without a doubt. And I think it spoke volumes when Carlos Colon made a guest appearance at the Garden, August the 1st of 77. They put him in with Johnny Rods because they wanted a good match, a great match, and they had it without a doubt. So Johnny Rods and his, the people he's trained, that's a Hall of Fame list within itself.
Yeah, a wing all by itself. Yeah, a whole Hall of Fame all by itself.
And if you don't know, the movie The Wrestler, Armand Cesari, Kid USA, was one of Johnny Rod's students. He was Mickey Rourke's stunt double in The Wrestler. He's the guy, actually, you see the picture coming off the top rope. That's Armand Cesari, without a doubt. And Johnny Rod's one of his greatest students. Well, I guess it depends how you look at it, but hey, they got the Academy Award, so they did a damn good job. I said, actually, I had sent, because Evan Ginsberg was one of the producers, and he was asking me, I said, send him to Gleason's gym. I mean, talk to Johnny. Johnny said, I don't know. Whatever happened, he said, we could work out a deal. So it's like, well, I know those Hollywood bastards. They shake your hand, you better count your fingers afterwards. So it didn't work out. But I tried.
Our other great friend, Davey O'Hannon, said of Johnny Rods that if he had chosen to not homestead in, the Northeast, and had decided to, travel the territories, he would have picked up a bucket full of championship belts everywhere.
Sure. That Java Rook gimmick from the West Coast. I mean, and I had no idea. Who did they say? Jimmy Valiant came up with the idea?
Of Java Rook?
Yeah.
I think it was actually Newton Tatry in Pittsburgh. I thought. I could be wrong.
Thank you. Newton Tatry, right. And it's like, perfect. That was beautiful. And then, of course, he comes back. He's got the JR on there, and it's like, okay, who's going to know? Johnny Rod. So, boom, it worked out perfectly. And you saw him week after week, and you always got a spectacular match. You got your money's worth, without a doubt. And you could tell there's a guy that's in great shape, and he was a judo specialist too. He could do all the martial arts, but he was damn good at judo. And if you needed a lesson, they'd send Mr. Rods in there to give it to you.
A company man. I mean, they rewarded him for his loyalty to the company for all those years. Without
a doubt. And I believe the story goes that Johnny, before the tapes were recycled, he would be one of the people that would bicycle the tapes around after they got done with the TV taping, and get them to the different places, and then it would go to other places. That's why we don't have a lot of some of the older footage, because they would retape it, always saving money.
Yeah, what a shame. I mean, so many territories. The Pittsburgh Studio Wrestling, same thing.
Yes. But now look at like when the beta machines came out first, or right around 76, 75, I think. We couldn't afford that. That was crazy. In fact, my first VCR was like $1,400, and I got that in '82. So, geez, now you pick them up for $50. Blu-ray,
right. All right.
but and then those damn tapes, even they were like $45. The great Walter Kowalski, the killer, the guy that took Yukon Eric's ear off, and you look at him. Does he look like a bodybuilder?
No, not at all. He looks
No,
like
not a
a
bodybuilder.
runner, maybe.
He looks like an octopus. You can see
Yeah.
the tendon strength. If he latches onto you, you are finished, without a doubt. And it's like he just trained and trained. He was a legitimate vegetarian. He was a people person, though. He gave me my first payday in wrestling, and it's coming up on June the 29th. It was all the way back in '96, and we had gone up to Boston. Because Nikolai said, "You want to go meet Boston?" I said, "Hell yeah!" Walk for Walter Kowalski to meet him. My God, night before, it was a show for Richard Byrne, who was a independent promoter too, and that night we were faces, believe it or not. Walter's guest referee. He saved me that night from Iron Mike Sharp, who beating the shit out of me. So the next day for Walter's show, we're heels, and then he beats the shit out of me. It's like, that's what an honor, though. And you can still feel it in an older guy, but if he ever got you and clocked you, boy, you'd probably not wake up. So on the dressing room, and he says, "Hey, kid, come here." I said, "Yeah, Walter, what's up?" He said, "Here, put that in your pocket and take care of Nikolai." I said, "Yeah, sure. Thanks, Walter." As Nikolai said, he didn't make a lot of money off the show, but that's the kind of guy he was. He didn't he would give too much sometimes, maybe. But Nikolai and I used to laugh and say, poor Walter, he was a bachelor all those years. He said, "Poor son of a bitch. He gets married. A year later, he's dead." I was like, "What does that tell you?" I said, "Yeah, Nikolai, what does that tell you?" Holy mackerel. He was good trained.
He never married. So he was what, in his like late 70s or something like that?
He very late in life. I said he just wasn't prepared for that. He wasn't trained to take that on.
Yeah.
That's special type of training.
Well, I mean,
you have to work your way into it.
Right.
Work your way into it. Captain.
We could do a show just on this guy alone, right?
One of these days, I guess we have to.
Yeah.
To do Capital Lou, but what a great guy. I mean, again, we said it last week. Bruno was the one that said, you're pretty much the shits as a wrestler, but I think you'd be a great manager. And boy, did he hit the cannonball on that one. I mean, the guy, he could talk. Who was it that said to us? It was George Napolitano. And he said, he would drive Lou, Freddie, and the Wizard, and whoever the number one contender was. And he said, as soon as Lou got in the car, it was like a switch. He was on, cussing at people, doing goofy shit. And it was just hysterical. So, a showman. But, Lou told me, he said, I made more money with that Super Mario Brothers gimmick than I did in all the years in wrestling. And he said, I did good with wrestling. But the Super Mario, because then you're getting all of that shit, the marketing, the DVD, all that's like, he cleaned up just being the real life. I think it was Luigi, and the kids loved it. And there you go. All you had to do was wear the hat and the overalls and yak a little bit, and Lou Albano. It was the great. Well, and he really was friends with Cyndi Lauper. That was true. He had a lot to do with the rock and wrestling connection, but so did Cal Rudman, the guy that did Spectrum Wrestling shows for Prism. Cal Rudman was a big maven in the music industry. So he actually, along with Lou Albano's connection with Cyndi Lauper, they're the ones that got a lot of that rock and wrestling going with MTV. And it was like, hey, that was brilliant. Not my cup of tea again. It wasn't my kind of wrestling anymore. But hey, Vince has got more billions than I do, so how can I argue?
Yeah. Yeah, somebody in the chat room saying we need to do a show about Lou. That definitely would be worth it. I mean,
Oh,
what a career!
Sure.
I don't my wrestling experience would not have been the same if Lou Albano was not a part of it.
No, without a doubt. The captain, I mean, and again, Jimmy Valiant gave him that moniker, Cap, because he's, hey, Captain, we're going to get it done tonight, baby. We're going to do it, Captain Daddy. And then Lou liked that, and he stuck with it. Call me Captain, baby. Call me Captain Lou. Captain Lou. And he and Vince, when we do the show on Lou, we'll dig into that deeper, but they did not like each other. Not at all.
They really didn't, right? That was not.
No, they exchanged some good words. But the old man knew, Vince Sr., he knew the value in Captain Lou Albano. And you got to give Lou credit, too, because he got sick there, and he dropped a lot of weight. He was looking good because he was the commissioner for the Heroes of Wrestling, which was supposed to go on and on and on. And maybe we'll do a show about that one of these days. But, they brought Lou in, and it makes sense because who else is a good personality like Captain Lou Albano? So, unfortunately, it died on the vine that night. But, again, we'll talk about that later.
Sure. Okay.
And the Baron, our man, Baron Mikhail Cicluna. I'll tell you what, for the people that use that stupid word jobber, it shows your ignorance because no, this guy was main eventing in the 60s. He was main eventing in the early 70s, besides former tag team champion. And you got to give the man credit. He knew old man time. You're not going to beat that opponent. So what do? Okay, I'm with the company. They're happy to put me in some of the openers, number 2 match, whatever. One of my favorites is he and SD Jones to open up a card. That's great.
Oh, yeah. Always a good match.
Yeah. And the Baron was like, okay, this is my part. I'll do it. No problem.
Yeah.
And that's how he would go. And he still had the foreign object, and he'd use it. And he would get a guy in Baltimore. His name was Bud. I don't know Bud's last name, but he's the nut that would stand in line at noon waiting for the ticket office to open, 6 p.m. the night of the current show for the next month. And Bud would be the first one in line. He wore glasses, and Cicluna would get him every month. He'd go like that with the glass. Bud would almost, I don't know how he didn't burst a blood vessel because he'd scream and turn purple, but Cicluna would work him perfectly. It was great.
Now, I believe he came over from Malta. I mean, by the time he main evented with Bruno in '66, I think he was already 37 years old. So he wasn't a spring chicken.
That was a legitimate story. He was from the Isle of Malta. I love that red velvet cape with the Iron Cross, and then his boots with the Iron Cross. But you could tell when he was out of the limelight, he wasn't wearing the cape or the boots anymore. He would come with just regular wrestling attire. Didn't wear anything, not a warm-up jacket, anything to the ring at the end. He just came in.
And he wore the singlet at the very end, right?
Yes, he was really.
But he's now he's like what, 52, 53?
Yes, and the Baron,
Still
he had a hand.
Shape, though.
I mean, boy, if he clobbered you with that ham hock, he'd knock you into next week. And he had that gravelly voice. So he was a natural heel.
Very rarely. A Baron Cicluna promo is one of the rarest things you'll see on the internet. Very hard to find.
Another guy, though. What do you want me to do? I'll do it.
Yeah. I mean, another one that pretty much for the last, 15 years of his career, homesteaded. Pretty much stayed on the East Coast.
Why not? He was a Pittsburgh guy. And it's like, okay, I can do this. I'm close to the home base. I'll pick up paydays all over there, from New York to whatever, Baltimore, if they, regular stop. I don't think he was going to Witchies too much or traveling too far up the coast to like the Connecticut or things like that even. But, it was like he's doing fine. And then he teamed up with Davey O and Johnny Rods, Pete Sanchez driving for the New York Times. And they did good with it. Dominic, of course. Dominic was big with that and beautiful. He and Danucci could give you a hell of a match. They were great together.
Always a good match. He and anybody. I mean, I don't remember ever seeing a bad Baron Scicluna match. Whoever Johnny Rods, SD, and he wrestled some of the prelim heels too, right? I mean, he wrestled Rods, he wrestled O'Hannon.
Absolutely. I remember it was a TV taping in 1978, and they threw the Baron a bone. He destroyed this guy, and it was the same night that Valiant's returned, and he just looked up like, oh, what a waste. But it was good. It was nice that they threw him a bone. He deserved it. Keep that name up there. It was good.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And Bruno respected him. Pat Patterson. Yeah. Well, there's a guy that he changed the World Wrestling Federation. Because when he, of course, his run, well, we said it last week, the greatest cage match of all time with Backlund, and then the North American belt, the Intercontinental belt, that and running 4 times with Backlund, that was all great. But when he became a television announcer after Bruno retired, and he started to get Vince's ear, junior and senior, he gave us a lot of talent. He was good friends with Sergeant Slaughter, and I believe they developed that character because when Slaughter was that super destroyer and in Minnesota, that was great. But of course, what can we say that will top Sergeant Slaughter? Just say the name. And he and Patterson, they ran with it. Patterson, though, Fuji and Saito would work great with Tony Garea and anybody, especially Rick Martel. So Pat was instrumental in bringing a lot of talent to the East Coast, people that were going to fly. And he was, thank God, he was a great interview. He would always give you, like the Cobra Clutch challenge. He was the perfect guy for that. Because for weeks, he'd just lay back and say, well, Vince, I'm studying the hold. I have some ideas. Let me see how things work out. And then when Slaughter slaps him in the face, we go crazy. And then from there, we get the alley fight. And that was just beautiful. Crazy. Again, the psychiatrist would say, what the hell's wrong with these people? Are they all sick? And it's like, yeah, maybe so, but we love it. We don't care.
No, to me, is one of the best workers ever, Patterson. It's got to be.
Oh, without a doubt. My only regret is that we could never get him and Ray Stevens together on the East Coast as a team. Ray Stevens was around when he did the Snuka. They brought him in basically for the Snuka angle. Then he stayed for a couple of more months. He had a couple of matches with Backlund at the Meadowlands and in Boston. But if Ray Stevens and Pat Patterson could have just cut loose, boy, that would have been gold.
Yeah. Let's see.
There he is, Mr. Vince McMahon Sr. He gave us a lot of good times, without a doubt. He knew what was going to work, and he knew what wasn't going to work. And all you had to do was shut thy mouth and listen, and you'd be fine. And
very, very highly respected, though.
Yes. And when they branched off from the NWA, it was he, Toots Mondt, a guy named Fred Kohler from Chicago, and then Arnie Skolin was part of it, and Willie Gilzenberg, before Willie Gilzenberg got, Willie lasted a while. So 63 to 78. So, Willie Gilzenberg, Phil Zacco, all these people got together and said, the hell with it. We can do this ourselves. We got New York. It's like, fuck, you guys keep your shit. We'll just run out there, see what happens. And when they started with Buddy Rogers, but then right away, wasn't long after that, they brought in Bruno, and it's like, kaboom. That was it. They were gold. But you got to know, if it wasn't for Bruno, I don't know if they would have made it. You really have to question it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if Bruno had not recuperated for that match at Shea, I mean, what would have happened?
Well, that would have ended things too. And as the story goes, they visited Bruno at the hospital and said, and the doctor, Civitri, or what was his name, Danny?
Yeah, Louis Civitrice. Yeah, I
Yeah,
believe.
Civitri, and he's like, call the police. You guys get the hell out of here. This man's in traction. And that's when the old man said, yeah, Bruno, okay. Called him and said, you can stay there, but you don't have to worry about coming back because the company will be gone because we're losing our shirts on this. And it wrestler versus boxers stank. And Antonio Inoki, it's like, we didn't have cable back then. It's like, would you see him in magazines? Well, like I said, $45 to go to the Hall of Fame. What the hell was pay-per-view back then? That was expensive. Who could afford it?
Right.
So unless it was somebody that you wanted to see Bruno in there with, it wasn't going to happen. So it was like, ding, ding, put Bruno in Shea Stadium. We'll simulcast against Hansen. And it's like, I guess Bruno, I love to have seen his face. It's like, you want me to do what? And 2 months later, there he was, April 26th, he gets a broken neck. June 25th, he's wrestling. You tell me, people, Superman.
I mean, what a burden on the poor guy, though. Can you imagine laying in the hospital? I mean, not even knowing at that point if you're even going to be fully functional again ever.
And
then having that burden,
a real broken neck. Seriously, 100% true broken neck. So, yep, he did it. He came back. Bruno.
And you never know it watching him wrestle, though. I mean, he looked, it was a short match, but he looked pretty damn good.
Well, I've never seen it actually, but from what I've heard, yeah, and it was supposed to be just go out there and clobber him and get the hell out of there. And then more and more Bruno was, coming back, tag matches, and then he started working his way back in. And then did he ever fully recover? I don't think so.
No.
I really don't think so.
I think that hastened him begging off for the, for Superstar to take the belt from him.
Yeah, I think he sat him down at one point and said, "You've got to stop. That's it. Enough. It's got to come to a conclusion here. I can't keep going."
Right.
And two of our favorites, Jimmy and Johnny, with the captain. One of the greatest tag teams of all time, without a doubt. And man, when they hit the East Coast, but then again, we say Bruno, he got to know them in Indianapolis. He and Dick the Bruiser were swapping the belts with the Valiant brothers after Dick the Bruiser brought them back from Pittsburgh after a tryout and loved them. So Bobby Heenan had them in Indianapolis. And then when Bruno came back east and said, "Hey, you got to bring these guys." I mean, geez, they're box office gold. And they were 1 year as champions, but you could put them as singles, 6-mans with Lou, 6-mans with Kowalski or Duncombe, anybody. And it's like, they changed the history of tag team wrestling. We'd seen Tanaka and Fuji, and they did a great job, but the Valiants, just something about them. I mean, the color, everything. It was just beautiful. And they would bleed, no problem. Bleed like crazy. It was heartbreaking when they came back in 78. And it was December the 12th of 78. 2 tapings, and then they find out Jimmy's sick, and then it was like, oh, no. And then they bring in Guy Mitchell as the third Valiant, but not going to make it.
I didn't think it was his name.
It's like
two of the best talkers ever. And then you pair them with Albano. Jeez.
Yes, we loved it. Still love it when I pop in a disc and it's like, holy shit, the Valiant brothers. To see them against the Chief and Bruno, because there was like I told you on the last show, or whenever it was, there was a Monday Night Football that was coming on, the Jets against Miami, and they were going to wrestle Bruno and Chief at the Garden, and everybody was edgy. It's like, I think people are going to stay home and watch the football game. And it's like, they were in the Garden. They wanted to see the Chief and Bruno against the Valiants. They had a full house and opened up the Felt Forum and turned people away.
Yeah, it's definitely a treat growing up watching those guys.
Amen.
And here's somebody who is in, but it took him forever to put him in.
Yeah, it took him forever, but if anybody was so deserving, it was Uncle Ivan. But how could you not have one of your heavyweight champions be in the Hall of Fame? And here's another guy that was a company man. Maybe not in terms that most people know it, but he was always there. Boom, he turned the belt over to Pedro. No problem. Kind of faded after that. Comes back in 75, reunites the feud with Bruno. I mean, they're selling out all over the place. The only Russian chain match in the history of the Worldwide Wrestling Federation took place in Boston. And there it is. He's wearing it around his neck. And that was great. Goes away. Then when Backlund's champion, bring him in to wrestle Backlund. That helped establish Backlund. And here's another guy had three. No, he didn't have the Wizard as a manager, but he came, really help Backlund get established, and that was great. And they had two good runs. And when Koloff started dropping weight in 78, he was trimmed down a little bit more. He and Backlund could go. And then even in 83, they didn't really run a big program with Backlund in 83. They only did one and done at the Garden, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and I don't know why. I guess maybe it was just too crowded. Morocco and Backlund and all kind of, it just no room at the end. So at least they got one good shot in there everywhere.
But I mean, to me, the fact that, in my mind, Ivan scored probably the most significant victory in the history of the WWF. How do you not have him in your Hall of Fame? He should have been right in the first class.
And look at his head. He shows the battle scars.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's like when we had Melody, his granddaughter, on, she spoke, the man, he labored in the later years. All of those injuries came back to knock at the door. And it was like, yeah, this is what you do. This is what you give. You give up your body for wrestling. And my God.
Yeah, and Father Time always comes to collect. Might take a while.
With interest.
Right. Well, yeah, the big. And who else we got? Tanaka. Now, he got in 2019, I believe, but he got the legacy deal.
Yeah, he got the legacy deal. But Professor Tanaka was definitely main event. Bruno discovered him and could have a great match with anybody. And he did with everybody. Bruno, Morales, Backlund. It's like Professor Charlie Kalani Tanaka. And he's the guy that brought Fuji to the East Coast, much to his regret, I think. Even though they made good money together, Fuji just about tortured him to death. After a while, he was pulling his hair out. But there he is with Chuck Norris movies. What a better heel to put in a movie, right?
And a three-time tag team champion, right? I think they were the first three-time champions, or
first three-time champions.
To it.
You put a guy like that in street clothes, and he looks even bigger. And then it's like Chuck Norris was no big guy, and it's like he's supposed to fight him. He's going to kill him. And Professor, he was breaking boards with his hands, his feet, his head, even cement blocks with his forehead. There's another guy that must have been married, break cement blocks with his forehead. So good old Professor Tanaka, and throwing the salt always.
Yeah, I just don't know why it took them so long to induct him. He should have been another guy that should have been right in the first class.
What people don't realize is after the first like I say, maybe 5 classes. Then it became, okay, celebrities. Who can draw money for us? Who can we play off of? And it's like, by that point, Professor was forgotten, and it didn't matter to them. It's nice that they finally light bulb went off, and somebody said we got to put him in even with this kind of, like, I call it like the backdoor award, but it's like he was already gone, but you still could bring the family in and say, hey, this guy, he put a lot of bucks into the cash registers of this business.
Oh yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt.
Great opponent for Bobo, great opponent for Bruno. There's
Absolutely.
who was that?
Now
That's
these are
Tony
guys who
Bennett.
are not. What a damn shame.
Tony Bennett. There he is. We used to kid him and say, Dominic, you look like Tony Bennett. He said, yeah, I wish I had his money. It's like,
Yeah, right.
What a great worker. He was a company guy to a point until they would push too hard. And there were times when it was like, are you kidding me? You know, this is what you're going to give me? Really? Huh. Okay. But very good friends with Bruno. And that was hard to do, to be the second Italian. And Dominic handled it well, because it's like some people, you know, you respect where you are, you respect the money, but it's like it's not easy to do. Like, and I said with Larry, you know, having to put Bruno over all the time and look like he's getting murdered in there. Fine, that was the conditions. But you know, Dominic, he did good on his own. He and Dino Bravo was tag champions. He won against
Rivera, yeah.
Superstar in Pittsburgh, you know, and it's like, but he and Bruno together, unbeatable. They were just like one shoe and the other shoe, perfect.
And his career outside of the World Wrestling Federation, his career in Australia was legendary.
Yes, Dominic was world traveled, and he definitely
great career.
Very much San Francisco and all over the place. Australia, Dominic could get it done. Japan, bring in Dominic DeNucci. And another trainer of some pretty good names, of course, Mick Foley and Shane Douglas.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Dominic was just like, open up a school.
How is this man not deserving of a spot in the Hall of Fame?
They don't need to. They don't care about what old fans think. They're more concerned about what the younger generation wants. And Dominic DeNucci the dust is blown off the book and blown out the window. They don't care.
I guess.
It's sad. It's disrespectful.
It really is.
And Victor Rivera.
Not the heel Rivera, the baby face. The heel Rivera wasn't very good.
Yeah, and I don't know. Victor, sometimes it's like he had coals in his pants. He couldn't sit down.
Now, he was not a company man, correct? He would come and go.
Yeah, he'd come and go, and you got to look out for number one, because they sure as hell aren't going to look out for you. So you got to make sure you got enough what's working for you, because it's like we heard from Tony Gurria, they come up and tap you on the shoulder, say, this is your last booking. You got to be prepared for what's next. So you can't blame Victor for trying to prepare for what would be next. And I guess it's like a stock that everybody's talking about, okay, let's grab it. And if it fails, you'll lose a lot of money. And for Victor, the IWA, I think that's what it was, right? IWA, it failed.
Yeah.
They had Roosevelt Stadium, but they couldn't get television. And you're not going anywhere without television. I don't care who you have or what you do. But Victor, I think, in my opinion, he could have been Pedro Morales. But I think his demons kept them away, because I believe we talked about it. Pedro was stronger. George Napolitano said it. Pedro was stronger in the 60s, and he had been around then. And it's like all of a sudden he's the United States champion and he's challenging the new champion the next month. And it's like, he came out of nowhere. But
Right.
Victor had been around, you know. And
Victor, when I started watching wrestling in '68 and 16, I think it was more like '69. Victor was the number 2 babyface before Chief came in.
Sure. He and Chief together then, it was like against Crazy Luke and Tarzan Tyler. Yeah, you got box office, man.
Yeah.
That's it.
Great stuff. Great stuff.
Now, who's that guy? Rick Martin. Oh, it's Larry Zbyszko. I always kid him. And our Tony Garea, Tony, our good friend Tony. Tony should be there without a doubt. And I don't think he ever really bothered with it, to be honest with you. I think all he would have to do is probably said the word to Vince and it would have happened. But I don't think it bothered him that much. But they should have done it as courtesy and respect for him, because Tony Garea gave a lot. Even as an agent, he gave a lot. But the fans, it's like, for the people that bought the tickets, he was one of the favorites. Top 10, top 5 even, maybe. You know, it's like Tony Garea, he's right up there. But
no,
what are you going to do?
That's a no-brainer.
Yeah. And Rick Martel.
Yes, Rick.
Now, for me, Rick Martel, he and Tony Garea, I said it before, I think were probably the most popular face team that they ever had. Bruno and Chief, yeah, but they only had 3 pops. They weren't all over like Martel and Garea, who just ran for almost a year, you know, and it was like matinee idols for the ladies. They certainly were high flyers, good condition for the men, and exciting. I wasn't crazy about the Moondogs, but then they grew on us until Sailor White couldn't come back into the country, and then it was like, oh, this is kind of like, it's like a punishment with Spot in there. It's just not the same.
It deteriorated.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
no disrespect, Spot, but wasn't the same. And Waldo, where's Waldo?
Why is Waldo not in there? I mean, the Von Erich family is in there, but Waldo Von Erich, I mean, how many times did he wrestle Bruno over the years?
It didn't matter anymore, because it's like he's gone. That fan base is gone. Nobody's got anything to offer the company like the Samoans or Maivia or anything like that. And it's like, after all the money, because he's wrestled Bruno the most through the years, in Madison Square Garden too. And it's like, but nobody cares anymore. So what's forgotten is forgotten, and they leave it at that.
Well, and I guess the people who do care are now in the overwhelming minority.
They don't look at us. They want to. We're not crazy enough to spend thousands of dollars on these WrestleManias that are like never ending, right. And it's like, what the hell are we even watching? It's ridiculous. But we were there when Waldo faced Bruno, Chief, and his last big run was in '75. But when Superstar was hurt, he filled in Baltimore and in Steubenville and also in Harrisburg. He took a couple of stop the presses, Toronto. And it was like, wow, unbelievable, because it was Von Erich against Stasiak. And Tony, I believe, said whoever wins is the new Worldwide Wrestling Federation champion. And it was Von Erich. And it's like, no. Somebody better check with Vince. That's not it. That's not happening. It sounded good for the time, but it wasn't going to fly. But he was the gimmick. He had all of the paraphernalia. At the time, the 60s, of course, wasn't far at all from World War II at all. The 70s, it was still pretty fresh in a lot of minds. A lot of our veterans were probably in their 50s, early 60s, so they were still able to get around and could really spew the hatred at him. But, it was like, uh-oh, you there, Benny? Uh-oh. I think Benny's gone. Let me see. Better watch what I say, because we still may be live. Let me see. Benny, where are you? Let me type him on this other thing. Not that, this. I think Benny's gone. I guess he's gone.
Stuff just go down, close, turn off.
Yeah, he just disappeared.
It's just because it's late, or
I don't know. We ran over a while.
it's almost 6. It's 5:52.
What's he say? Benny. Oh, it's not Benny. It's Kowalczyk.
His phone number.
Well, I'll ask him. Well, I said gone, but I don't get anything on it. Now, hold on. You're still live. I'm still on there. Okay. Thank you, Alan. Hold on. Let me see what's up. Where is StreamYard? All right. And let me leave the studio before I do or say something.